What does the data say? Derek McNamara is back with us. Good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Ger. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, keep well.
Are you excited about this?
I'm very excited, yeah. Like, it's been a pretty spectacular season for Irish rugby, for Leinster rugby, for Munster rugby. It's been an undoubted success if you're looking at it from an Irish perspective.
Four teams in the Champions Cup next season as well. Yeah.
Similar to your game against Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Yeah, it's up there.
Did I see a touch after you potted the second ball? Did I see you thinking, I'm going to beat Ronnie O'Sullivan here?
You start to get excited. You're ahead of yourself. Someone in the comments said Ronnie had actually cheated as well. I mean, listen, I'm not saying I'm better at pool than Ronnie O'Sullivan, but sometimes you can see the success in your eyes.
Yeah, I know, it's up there. So look, it's been an amazing couple of months, really, and we got to take that into consideration. And like, if we look at it from an analytical perspective, when these teams start off at the start of the season, right, it's nearly like a line, right, where you've got a really good player who you know is really, really good. You can push that player to try and get them into good positions, or get them into positions where they can make a bigger impact so that you can win. Or else you've got a better skill set. So you've got a better skill, say counter rucking. You push that because you know that you're better at that than other teams. And then you can do it, say, for backroom staff, or you can do it from, say, a physical, mental, technical, and tactical. If you have a way of measuring those things. So like the Munster last weekend, Leinster, had a coaching melter, to be honest. If you've got 2, maximum 3 games left in the season, you play your best team no matter what. Like, that's just, in nearly every other sport you do that.
Yeah, but then what if one of them gets injured and you
run that risk anyway.
You don't. I mean, you didn't play them. Like, they didn't play the front row. They didn't play first choice, second row. They didn't play their first choice 9 or 10. They didn't play the first choice fullback or their wings.
The team that they played was a mismatch of both. Right, you're nearly better off putting on your total seconds team. The chances of those players ever playing together, let alone even coaching together, during the season, it's not just about putting out players and expecting them to win. There has to be a plan. And if you're in the NFL, or you're playing soccer, or you're playing any of these other sports, they're physical sports. You want to keep that small incremental steps and learning, playing together.
So
2 games.
In a situation where they had played their full bore last week, right? And we know La Rochelle rested basically their first choice. Which coach would you rather be?
I'd like to be the Leinster coach. Well, had they won, but now you see in the media, the entire media are like, are Leinster going to lose? But this team hasn't lost a game. This team who've played together, whether it's for Leinster or for Ireland, the last time they lost was against La Rochelle this time last year. So, like this line that I was talking about, Munster were able to push the physical side of things because they knew Leinster weren't going to be at the races. They pushed the physical side of things. Or if you look at the likes of Arsenal this year, okay, where they had a really young team, really young background or staff, played fantastic, free-flowing soccer at the start of the season. And then, as the season went on, they just weren't able to actually keep that up. And very similar thing that happened to Liverpool before they won the champion or the league a couple of years ago. The season before, they fell apart around the same time of the season. And what they did is they used analytics and data to measure kind of what it is you need to do to get to a point of winning the league. And that's the way they're able to bring in the specific players who are able to come in and play at a specific level. And that's quintessentially what analytics is having a way of measuring yourself versus all your other teams that are out there. And what we do in Rec Rugby is specifically, well, we help with all that type of measuring, but we also help with what's happening in the game. And when you get to professional, when you get to the elite level, you're able to then implement game plans based on the analytics, based on where your line is compared to where the other line, your opposition's line is. And what I thought would be a good idea, a good exercise, is to look back at this time last year's, and look at the game, the final last year.
Because it's actually going to be largely the same Leinster team, with obviously the exception of the 10. Starting. We expect it to be a very similar starting team. There might be one other change, maybe.
Yeah, and look, if we were to look at where La Rochelle are compared to where they were this time last year and this year, they're kind of roughly the same in certain elements, certain skill sets, but passing they've improved significantly, and they've improved in the back row as well. So they're 7 with Botia playing now. He's significantly improved them. But if we were to look at what Leinster have done between last year and this year, they have significantly improved in nearly all areas. And if we put those two lines together, Leinster are still significantly favourite, but they were this time last year as well.
I don't remember what the odds were last year, but the spread.
10 points.
Which?
I think there were 10 points or 11 points last year.
Okay, I think it opened this week at around 11, but it's down to 7 now. Is what so a lot of money's come for La Rochelle this week. Is what that means.
Yeah,
like a really significant amount of money. If I'm right, if it did start at 11 earlier and it's now 7, it's not like a few 50 quids here and there. That's a big amount of money that will come from.
Let's bring it back.
Yeah.
But if we look at what happened last year, okay, so if we look at what La Rochelle did prior to the actual game. Okay, so basically when they were creating a game plan, they looked at kind of 3 main areas. And I think we have a slide here just to show that. So basically they went out to disrupt the game plan.
Is this last year's plan?
This is last year's game plan, okay? So they went out to disrupt Leinster's game plan, hold on to the ball and disrupt the breakdown. Okay, so the first one when we say disrupt Leinster's game plan, okay, they basically, there's basically the 2 lines of game plan, and prior to the games last year, it was identified that Leinster had a significant drop-off in the second half, okay? So La Rochelle would have known this, so the idea is how do we stay in the game in the
when
first
you say
half?
They have a drop-off in the second half, what do you mean?
So the accuracy of players, the accuracy of the breakdown, the overall performance of the team had a significant drop-off, whether it's passing the ball, the accuracy wasn't as good, whether they're entering the ruck, the accuracy wasn't good, or whether or not they were making tackles or missing tackles. So there was a significant drop-off in Leinster's performance last year.
So over the course of the season?
Over the last 3 or 4 games leading up to the final.
Okay.
So when we had the line of Leinster, there was a significant drop-off in the end of the second half, but La Rochelle's was nice and straight. But in the first half, La Rochelle were significantly less, or weren't as good as Leinster, basically. So La Rochelle had to disrupt Leinster's game plan, and they did that by understanding where Leinster's carrying came from, which was their back row. So that was their biggest threat. So they were able to blitz in midfield to take away that first receiver off the second pass, the behind Sexton and the pod.
Yeah.
So they were able to blitz to slow down Leinster down.
That would tend to have been a back row.
Yeah.
And so
we don't have to worry about all the other carriers. We just need to worry about the back row.
And so that's a cue for the defence, because again we were talking to James Tracy about tells and things that you see, and in the analysis you're waiting to see stuff, those patterns emerge, and when they emerge, then okay, I actually know where the ball is going to go here.
Yep.
Because you've done the work in advance.
Yeah, and that's exactly so. La Rochelle would have known this last year. So basically, if they were able to disrupt Leinster's game plan in the first half and slow that ball carrying down, then they knew in the second half the data shows that they could, they got a bigger chance of winning, and that those trends aren't there this year. Okay, so there's no drop off in Leinster's performance this year. It's steady the whole way through. They're not making the same mistakes. The substitutions that they're making a little bit earlier, or a little bit, injuries this weekend is going to be huge, because 2 teams are going to go out hell for leather. If Leinster can avoid getting an injury earlier on, then it's a massive, massive bonus for Leinster. Massive bonus. So the second thing that La Rochelle like to do is they like to hold on to the ball. Okay, so if they have the ball, then Leinster can't score. Pretty obvious. Okay, but when we look at the data, they're happy enough to hold on to the ball in midfield. So they spend around 50% of the time in midfield. I'm not sure if you remember. During the Six Nations, Italy were similar. They had a similar type of game plan in midfield, but they weren't ever able to break the teams down they were playing against. And as a result, they weren't able to, cause penalties. La Rochelle, on the other hand, they play really, really narrow. They play more narrow than Ireland do. So that's something that Leinster will know this year, is they don't need to worry too much out wide over the first, second, third and phase. But as soon as they go through the phases, that's when they have to worry. So then the last thing that they looked at is disrupting Leinster's breakdown.
Can I just ask you about that? So say this is going to happen, but with the big beasts that La Rochelle have, I know this thing that you're going to do to me, and then you do it to me anyway, and I'm like, oh man, it's even more depressing now, because I could have stopped you, but I just can't stop you. Yeah,
so I think Leinster's defensive line has improved significantly. So there's the way in which Leinster plays, again, very, very similar to Ireland, nearly identical, where they can play different patterns when they're in defensive line. So they can actually close the door, they can sprint up, they can blitz, they can run up and stop every time the ball has been passed. So I'd expect to see those types of game plans being implemented this weekend, where and the other side of this whole thing is that there's, we're going to talk about it in the breakdown, is decoying. Okay, so when you get really, really good at implementing game plans, and you get really, really good at being able to measure the performance of your opposition, you can set decoys. So you can show as if you're doing one thing, but a matter of fact, that's just what the opposition wants you to do. Okay, so that's what I'd expect to happen when we look at the breakdown.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so basically when we look at the breakdown, so La Rochelle, when they're counter-rucking, okay, last season, when we took the last 4 or 5 games leading up to the final in 2022, they contested around 60% of the breakdown with a 17% success rate. So what that means is the average is around 51%. Okay, so La Rochelle contesting with the breakdown. So what 17% means of success rate means they either disrupted, they either slowed the ball down, they either caused the ball to spill out, they turned a turnover, or they caused a penalty. Okay, so that's what that 17% means.
And is 70% high?
It's not unusual.
Okay.
It's actually right around where everybody else is. Okay, so when we look at the actual final, though, as La Rochelle actually contested 85% of all breakdowns.
So they made it a war zone.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, exactly. So the consequences of that is that it draws an extra player in from Leinster's play. So rather than there being 2 players per ruck, there's now 3 players per ruck. And what that does is then it causes the back line to not have players in positions that they need to be, which disrupts even further what's happening in the game.
Yeah, and the knock-on is Leinster scored no tries.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so while the success rate at 15% is, average, but if you do it way more, the average being at a similar number means the actual number of times that you are successful increases because you're doing it more often.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's also more physically wearing, I suspect.
No, but see, that's the thing. So we'll go into now in a second, just around the individuals, but how you combat that. So something that probably Leinster didn't look into, which I don't know if they're looking into this year, but I think they'd be silly not to, is that if you're counter-rucking, if you're actually making an attempt at the breakdown, then that has a significant impact on what you're doing, okay? Because if you're...
Leaves space behind you, you mean?
Yeah, all of a sudden there's space either left or right of the breakdown. And what Leinster failed to do last year is do that pick and drive, and the heat and the exhaustion and everything kind of... Now, they lost by last play of the game, right?
Yeah. We're talking tiny margins here. World-class teams.
Yeah, so, but the point here is that if La Rochelle go to do that this year, if they go to that kind of 70 to 80% breakdowns, then Leinster are going to know that this year. So this is how the game has evolved, using data, using analytics.
But maybe that's the bluff.
Maybe this is the bluff. We're going to get to that. So when we just look at La Rochelle, where they are now in 2023, so we've looked at their last 5 or 6 games, they're around 66% of contested breakdowns, which is high. It's reasonably high, with a success rate of 19%. Okay, so they've ticked up from where they were last year, but they're still in the ballpark of where they were. So they can push that 85% if they want to. But when we look at who it is that's responsible, so when we look at the final last year, we have Skelton, Aldrich, how do you spell this name? Bourgeois, is it?
Bouguerie.
Sorry,
that's how Raj pronounces it. I think he's on this, right?
So it's funny because anytime I'm watching these games, I never have the audio on because we're always doing it so I don't know how to pronounce most of these names. Bouguerie. So basically, we've got first, second, and third for people that are watching at home, and then we have the success rate. So Skelton slows the ball down around 25% of the time. So 1 in every 4 rucks that he hits. But he hits a lot, okay? But the thing with Skelton is that he never causes turnovers, okay? He just slows the ball down. So Leinster are going to be aware of that. They don't have to worry about him stealing the ball. They just have to worry about him slowing the ball down. But if all you have to do is worry about slowing the ball down, then that's okay. You can live with that. You don't have to put the players into the breakdown as you did last year.
So if you identify what the threat is, you can deal with it.
Yeah. So then Aldrich last year, who was number 1, he had a significant impact on the final last year. He actually stole a lot of balls. Bouguerie, he actually had 0 impact on the game, even though he hit, I think it was like 12 counter rucks in the game.
This is specifically on the counter ruck, yeah.
This is on counter rucking, okay. And Botia didn't play last season, okay. So then we'll just look at the last slide, which is 2023, okay. And Aldrich now is nearly no impact again. We have Skelton, who has, again, a significant impact in the game, but it's just slowing the ball down. He doesn't turn the ball over. And then Botia, who is, he doesn't hit as many rooks, but he's the guy that we got to worry about as a Leinster fan.
He's their Ty Byrne.
Yeah, very much so. He's the guy who causes the penalties. He's the guy that causes the penalties or turnovers. But if you can live with Skelton, we can live with Aldrich, and we can live with
Botia.
Yeah.
Buggery.
Yeah. We can.
Can't live with Botia though. Sorry.
Botia. Yeah. So we got that's the one thing. And you know, if we were just to go back to their initial game plan, you know, disrupt Leinster's game plan, stay in the game. They can't just rely on the three back rows to be worrying, because Leinster's game plan are much more dynamic. They can't just come off the line and sprint like they would against who was it, the Dragons, or whoever they played in, or Ulster. They can't just do that sprinting, because the lines of running that Leinster run are so far superior to anybody they're going to play against this year. Hold on to the ball. La Rochelle must hold on to the ball for at least 20 minutes of actual game time in the game. And if they don't, then they're going to be significantly disrupted. And then disrupt Leinster's game plan. I just don't think that they're going to have that same success that they did last year, because of the things that we've spoken about, and because of the understanding around the breakdown of these players causing a distraction. You know, it's not real. It's they may turn the ball over once or twice between those three players, Aldrich, but Botia, if they just keep an eye on Botia, then, and you know, Leinster have another plan, I'm sure, to take away certain elements of La Rochelle's game plan, which are pretty simple. Like, really, there's not a hell of a lot to what they do in certain areas, especially the set piece. They got to be really, really tight.
So I know you say there's not a hell of a lot to it, but like, again, talking to James Tracy, he was like, their maul is once it gets going, and even in the papers today, the front row are talking about the scrum. We need to get the ball out of the scrum really quickly, because once they get you going, once they get you moving, toast. So
that is one of those things that we use analytics to try and turn their strength into a weakness. So they can't start a maul if they don't have the ball in the line-out. Their line-out is really, really simple. Like scarily simple. So, you know, that's where they would...
Is that not a strength, though? Is that like...
From La Rochelle's perspective?
Yeah, if you have a very simple way of getting to your strengths fast... Yeah,
but when you have one player who's lifting 41% of the time, so one of their players, I'm not going to mention who it is, lifts 41% of the line. So he's nearly involved in 100% of all the lineouts. So you don't need to worry about where the ball is going to go. You just need to worry about where that player is.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Again, right? Say they're able to do that. You know it's coming, and they still manage to do it.
Their maul isn't actually that good. Their maul is really, really what would you call it? It's really frenetic. Okay, so they get the ball down and they come at different angles to push the ball. But if you stop that at the start, and same with the scrum, if you can stay really, really tight and try not to push, just stay tight, they come on for the second push. Okay, so again, if Leinster know that, then they can, if they just stay tight, then depends, I think, who's the referee?
I'll double check here for it.
South African dudes.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then they need to get the ball out quick.
Piper, isn't it?
It's Piper, yeah.
Okay,
Piper.
it is, yeah. So there's a couple of things, but like, again, there's the number of scrums that have been played in professional rugby has dropped by 20% in the last year. So there's not that element necessary in the scrum as there would have been. So, you know, we're trying to look at those two lines. If we're saying, okay, La Rochelle are here, Leinster are here, where are La Rochelle slightly better? You know, after last week's performance, I would say coaching, they definitely have a bit of an up on the coaching as an overall product. Do they have better players? No, they don't. Like Ireland's, like it's all of Ireland's team. These players have been playing together for years. This is the pinnacle of what they're doing. We've got the World Cup in a couple of months. Are they better at skill sets? They're slightly better at passing. They're 10 is good, really amazing kicker. So they have to be really wary about giving penalties anywhere in their own half or in scoring position. But as a 10, as a threat, he's not a threat. He gets the ball and he ships it on. He doesn't even come onto the ball very quickly. So he doesn't take it flat. So he's not a worry. So there's all these things that are being said in the media, which is like, okay, that's a really good perception on it. But in reality, when we look at the data, Leinster are favourites. And if they're only 7 points favourites, then I'd be putting a few quid on it. Well, if I was into that thing.
That is not gambling advice, just by the way.
No, I don't even gamble.
So you're confident that Leinster are going to win this weekend?
Yeah, come on.
All right.
That's stupid.
All right.
Finally a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence, stupid. Okay, Derek, reactrugby.com if anybody wants more details. Thanks a million. That's Derek McNamara with us previewing the game this